Hello and welcome to the video. On today's topic, I'm going to talk about skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism is a design concept of making items resemble their real-world counterparts. Skeuomorphism is commonly used in many design fields, including user interface, web design, architecture, and interior design. The term skeuomorphism is compounded from the Greek word skeos, which means container or tool, and morphe, meaning shape. So, why do we need it in the first place? It is because a good product design is intuitive. It doesn't require any explanation, and a complete novice user should be able to master the product based on instinct alone. From the earlier slides, we have decoded the terminology of skeuomorphism and we have understood a bit of history. Now, let's try to understand its use case in the industry. So essentially, a product with familiar designs are easier to use because users can rely on their previous experience interacting with these products. Designers use this concept to make interface much intuitive to the users. Let's take the example of Apple. The original iPhone was the first buttonless phone that hit the market. The phone didn't have any sort of tactile buttons on it, and it was critical to make the interface intuitive to the people who had never used a phone with a touchscreen earlier. Hence, the concept of skeuomorphism was used to design the entire buttons and the icons as you can see in the image attached. Skeuomorphism was one of the most important design techniques for interface designers. It was particularly helpful during the three waves of the digital world's evolution. During the rise of the personal computers in the 80s, the mobile revolution of the 2010s, and the rise of the smartwatch in the last decade. It helped product creators minimize the effort required to learn how the users use the product. But in spite of all this, there was a mixed feeling about it. People were not able to react how the past is shaping the future. What do I mean by this? Let's take an example of a floppy disk. A floppy disk these days is just an image. For kids who grew up in the cloud and the flash drive era, they will not be able to associate a floppy disk as a platform in which you could save stuff. They would rather associate it with the save option used these days. If you can notice from the earlier slide, we can see that the skeuomorphism was used till the iOS 6. From iOS 7 onwards, the concept was not used very widely. Does it mean that the skeuomorphism has been eradicated from the industry overall? Let's try to find it out from this slide. Yes, from the all the experience, we can state that the skeuomorphism has surely reduced because of the rise of the devices with small high resolutions have increased. There is a limitation on how much information one can get on a phone screen. The screen has a certain boundaries beyond which the viewer can't see. Has skeuomorphism reduced completely? Does it mean? No. The UI elements are still using it. For example, the buttons are still having the physical aspects and also the checkboxes, and so does the windows. Let's try to take another example. If you look at the input forms, they are still similar to a paper. And also the movies represented by a video cassette boxes, and even the battery icon are shaped like a battery. The skeuomorphism has not totally vanished, but yes, its usage has been reduced drastically in the industry. The skeuomorphism has evolved a period of time into neomorphism, which makes the use of a mild and subtle effects and does not try to over-represent objects in nature like the predecessor. But it creates a new form in which it appears in a very subtle way. Neomorphism is a clean and a minimalistic design style that introduces a new concept by lightening up the exposed surface. So one must understand how to use it wisely. So it comes a very important point that with any new design trend, it is essential to evaluate the need of the user. If your design team wants to transition into a new aesthetic concept, you should always take your user needs into account. Never sacrifice the user experience for the sake of trendy aesthetics. And every time you want to introduce a new visual style, always, always, and always ensure it works for your user.